Why do people like technology? Is it just something new? We just want a new way to do old things? For a while it was just a quill, just find a feather and you've got a pen if you've got a little bottle of ink. So why go from that to a fountain pen? What's the difference in the two? And then from a fountain pen to a stylus. Why the change? Why not just stay with the old-fashioned way? For a while, books, I think there's still a few books around. Pretty good way of getting information from A to B. It's better than having to go talk to the author and be able to sit down and listen and remember everything that he said. But we've gone from books to a hard drive or a flash drive. What's the difference? Or here, this guy was reading with that old thing called a candle. Now we just use that to smell up the room in a better way, maybe. So we've gone from candles to light bulbs. A point in all of these is what does the technology, what's the appeal of the technology? Is it really letting you do anything different when you turn on a switch? Are you doing anything different than when you lit a candle? It's not. It isn't that technology so much that there's an appeal to do something different. Oh, I've never done it like this before. That's a little bit exciting. And then the new wears off and you're back to just doing what you were always doing. I don't believe the appeal of technology is just that it's new, but it's often the speed that, if you had the old quill, then you run out of ink, and then you got to go somewhere and get an ink, and then if your quill breaks, you don't have that fine tip, but the stylus, you don't have those problems. You can just keep on doing what you're doing with less interruptions. So you're just doing the same thing that they were doing, but you're doing it faster. So there's less waiting, more doing, more information, and more choices. And that's what appeals to an American mind, more choices. So is it better to do things faster? Is it better to know more? Is it better to have more choices? Well, sometimes yes, sometimes no. There's really nothing that is superior or inferior to one or the other. Technology isn't good or bad. So when is it good or bad? When is it wise or unwise to do more and to do it faster and to have more choices? I don't claim to be able to answer that for everyone, but what I can do and what we can do is what we read in Proverbs chapter 4 was the appeal for wisdom. Learn God's way of thinking in the process of making decisions in all of life. Doesn't matter what the area may be. But tonight, I want us to think about wisdom in the context of technology. Again, this isn't a right or a wrong, a use it or don't use it, but use it in a way that is not only lawful, but helpful. And I've stepped on my own toes in the process of this study and in thinking about these things, and so I hope it will help you as well. The desire for wisdom often grows when we see a potential threat, some degree of danger. So let me begin in that way. A few years ago, there was a movie, not really a story, but somewhat of a documentary. It was called Connect, and it was focused on families and technology, parents and children, and how to juggle and to balance all of that. And in that, they interviewed a woman who, I forget specifically if she was a counselor, but she had a lot of experience in talking to parents and children and some of the problems that had arisen and technology being involved in those to some way. And she pointed out 5 lies that she believed had commonly been accepted because of the common ways that technology is used. So she wasn't saying technology is terrible and get rid of all of it, but just here are 5 ways that people today are commonly deceived because of the ways that they're using, especially social media was the focus of this show. So here were the things that she called the 5 lies of technology. That, again, it's not that technology is the problem so much as the way that it's used. And so that many people, because of that, have been trained to think and to believe I should be the center of the universe. I should always be happy. I deserve to have choices. I am my own authority. And then having knowledge, in other words, just getting information, that's good enough. If I have information, I really have all that I need. And what I think is behind each of these is really the word more. Now, I think she's speaking in hyperbole and some intentional exaggeration, but the idea that I should be the center of the universe is just the idea that I want more attention. Some people use, especially social media, to get more attention. I think she's accurate. I think she's right in that. And then looking for more happiness, and then looking for more choices, and more authority, and more knowledge. So I think this is a helpful observation, whether or not you agree with all five, or maybe you think she missed five others that are even more dangerous. I believe the point is correct, that we need to be aware and not be trained into expecting a life of constantly having more. And you can have that expectation without technology. So most of what I'll say tonight isn't specific to that. It's just a part of the world that we live in. And so how do we walk in it with wisdom? To illustrate that, I'm not going to turn back and read, but in Genesis chapter 3, and we talked about this in class this morning, what was it that Satan used to entice Eve? He didn't offer her an iPad, but he persuaded her that you should have more wisdom and more food choices and more variety of taste. I mean, I know you got this grove out here of delicious food, but hey, she looked at that one and thought, I think that would taste delicious. So that just illustrates technology is not really the problem at the heart of this. What's at the heart of problems then and today is believing some of the lies of Satan, whether it's these or something else. And so in Proverbs chapter 4, we read a moment ago, verses 1 through 7. I want to hone in on verse 7. And let me just read it again. Wisdom is the principal thing, therefore get wisdom, and in all you're getting, get understanding. So let me ask, and you answer it to yourself, and then we'll talk about some other ways that we have already answered this question. But what would you say is for you the principal thing? Well, we would all write down the right answer because we've already read the right answer. Right answer is, well, wisdom, getting wisdom. That's the main thing. That we want to answer it the right way. But then what we answered that question yesterday. I did, and you did, and the day before that. This past week, you've answered the question of what is the principal thing to you by the way that you chose to spend your time, and what direction did your money go towards, and your energy, and what are the things that you're talking about when it's up to you and you're not doing it. I mean, we're often talking about the things that we're doing because it's on our mind because it's right there. But what are the things that are on our mind so that we're talking about them even when they're not right in front of us and we're not engaged in it? See, those are the things that indicate what the principal thing is. And then inwardly, that question is answered by what are the things that I anticipate. I know when it happens, I know when it's going to happen next, and I look forward to it again. And then what are the things that I know is coming up, and I'll do it if I have to. I kind of dread that it's coming up. What are the things I pursue? What are the things that I avoid as much as possible? What are the things I sacrifice for? What are the things I just give the bare minimum that I have to? In which things do I give my best? In which things do I neglect it as long as I can? The way we make our decisions and our attitude towards those decisions, that's the other side. That's the real answer in our life to what the principal thing is. And so Solomon says, in all you're getting, get wisdom. Think about, the fact is, life is a process of getting more. It's not absolutely wrong to get more. That's the nature of life. Who knew that better than Solomon? Read about him and read about the offer God made to him and read the book of Ecclesiastes. Life is a process of getting knowledge in our society. That may be a formal education or an informal training and education. And getting a spouse and getting a job and maybe getting children, getting a house, getting a car. These are things common to the American way of life. These are kind of series of stair-step goals often. So we're all in the process of getting. Solomon's point is not, well, only get. Don't get anything else. Just get wisdom and then sit in your little house with wisdom and live your life. No. His point is we need wisdom before we get the other things. Because in the process of getting those other things, wisdom will help you. So let wisdom be the principal thing, and it will help you in all of your getting. And when as in thinking about getting, that's what we usually, or maybe often, use technology to do. It's a manner of getting things often, and we can get them a little bit faster than we used to, and we can get them a little more often than we used to. I would say that's what social media is. Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, and I don't know what the latest thing is, but even that old archaic thing called email, it's just a matter of getting information and giving information. And then now there's some other methods that let us do that a little bit faster. But in the social media, in that communication, think about what do you get out of that? What you give is really another aspect. But as you go through, as you think about whatever you use on a daily basis, as you open that or sign in or log in or whatever you do you mostly get things that are good? Do you open it and sometimes it's not even up to you, but you open it, you look, and you constantly see things that are evil. You constantly have to look away, delete, click off. Is it a source of something where you're constantly seeing evil, getting evil, even if you're not choosing it? We all know once you see it, the image is there. Are you getting things that are not really good or evil? They're lawful and they're helpful. So in some means, in some way, it can be an app, it can be a text. You're getting information that helps you do your job more effectively, helps you maybe in some skill that you're developing. That would be lawful and helpful. Everybody else doesn't have to have that. It's not right in that sense, but it's permitted and it's beneficial to you. And then how many of the things that you see, it isn't something sinful, but it's really empty and shallow. It's not really helpful. That would be constantly getting a notification about the latest update in sports and politics and news and entertainment. And so throughout the day, I'm constantly reminded, I constantly get this input, this information, and it may not be sinful, but what is the benefit to it? And then sometimes the greatest, maybe danger is an overstatement, but that it keeps me from sometimes other things because it keeps filling my inbox and my mind with things that are lawful, not sinful. Reading it and even thinking about it is not going to directly send me to hell, but is it something that's not helpful just because it really is more of a distraction? It can be the internet, websites, even books. So I'm not picking on technology because, again, books are really a matter of technology. Again, it's easier for someone to write it down, and that distributes that information faster than if it's just by verbal means. So think of those things, not only what you receive, but then what are the things that you are using technology to pursue? Are you using technology to pursue things that are good? So an example of that would be having a Bible app, and so now it's more accessible. I can read it more often. Am I accessing things that are evil? I read from society in general, and even from time to time from brethren, how common pornography is, even among Christians. And I'm not someone that lots of people seek advice from, but just in my short 45 years of life, there's a couple of individuals, of younger people that had been, for different reasons in their youth, caught in pornography and following that for many years, and really an acid to their life and to relationships. Am I using it, intentionally going out and seeking things? Again, book, email, app, you name it. Something that's lawful and helpful. Or am I spending a lot of time really just spinning my wheels in things that are lawful, not condemnable in and of themselves, but they just are not helpful? So how do we sort through all that? I can't do it for you. But I think this is a challenge that we all share. We're all getting information. What am I getting? And in all am I getting wisdom? Because what if I don't? Turn to Proverbs chapter 1. The whole book of Proverbs deals with what happens if I do seek wisdom and what happens if I get lots of things but I don't seek wisdom. But here's one summary of that. Read with me from Proverbs chapter 1, verses 28 through 32. And in this, it says, as if wisdom is personified and speaking and telling us, here's what happens if you don't listen to me, to wisdom. It says, then they will call on me, but I will not answer. They will seek me diligently, but they will not find me, because they hated knowledge and did not choose the fear of the Lord. They would have none of my counsel and despised my every rebuke. Therefore they shall eat the fruit of their own way and be filled to the full with their own fancies. For the turning away of the simple will slay them, and the complacency of fools will destroy them. So God's created a world in which we can choose to get things with wisdom, or we can choose to ignore wisdom and get many of those same things. But the process by which we get there is going to lead us in one direction or the other. And Jesus, in Matthew 13, in the parable of the soils, and the soil that had the weeds and the thorns, remember those were that was the heart where the cares of this world, some cares of this world would be sinful, some cares would not be sinful. The deceitfulness of riches, that involves some technology, and the pleasures of this life. None of those things of themselves being sinful, but remember the point in the parable is those things grow faster, the interest of that one, those things grow faster in that one's heart, and so his interest is really devoted to feeding those things, and they grow, and it isn't that the faith in that one dies, it just says that plant becomes unfruitful. And I believe that is one of the dangers that we're looking at tonight. Likewise, in Matthew chapter 16 and verse 26, sits right alongside Proverbs 4, and all you're getting, get wisdom. Because what does it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his soul? So Jesus spoke to this same thing, as the same subject as Solomon does. Wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore get wisdom, and in all you're getting, in all that you get, and that's what technology allows us to do, is a lot more getting than anybody ever has been able to. Okay, not saying don't get it, but be sure you get wisdom. Proverbs chapter 19 and verse 10. Proverbs 19 and verse 10. It says, luxury is not fitting for a fool. And if you take notes, you like a couple cross-reference, Proverbs 30 verse 22 says something similar to that. Who would be more qualified, especially several thousand years ago, to talk about luxury than Solomon? Again, the book of Ecclesiastes and his reputation for his wealth, as well as his wisdom that God gave him. He would be the right one to talk about luxury and to talk about the wise and the foolish. So for someone who indulged himself in luxuries, why would he say this? Let's just be reminded of what luxury is. Luxury is just more than we need. And all of us can look at our lives. We could go home and pick out any room, and there would be a large pile of luxury there. So Solomon doesn't say, get rid of luxury. He doesn't say the problem is luxury, but he just says luxury in the hands of the wrong one is not fitting. It isn't helpful. Fools do not benefit from having more than they need. It harms them more than it helps them. They like it, and they'll keep getting as much as they can, as much as someone will give them or give them access to. They'll pursue it, but it doesn't help them, it hurts them. And we've seen this play out in our society in a variety of ways. A loan would be an example of that, and a credit card would be an example of a loan, wouldn't it? Who doesn't want access to more? Everybody wants more, but is more helpful for everyone? Does it hurt everyone? No. In the hands of someone who knows how to use more, in the hands of someone who knows how to use a credit card and how to assess what they have and what they don't have, it's a helpful tool. But when a loan is given to someone who isn't ready to use it, it doesn't help them. It feels good for the moment, but it doesn't help them, and it can actually destroy them. So, again, going back to the luxury that we're talking about, technology is a luxury, and technology offers more. It offers more speed, again, and our society likes speed. But then with wisdom, we would need to say, well, do I need to do more? Do I need to do more things faster? Or do I need to choose to do fewer things, to go a little bit slower so that I can pay more attention to what I'm doing because I'm going slower? Or do I just follow the trend and do everything faster because I can, and in the process, our eyes can only pick up so many things when we're going fast. I just need wisdom. Technology offers more information. That's good, and so we can get it quick, but do I always need to know more? Is it always helpful to know more, or sometimes do I just need to focus on using what I already know? You could actually even read the Bible too much. If all I'm doing is reading the Bible and then I'm not applying it, I'm not doing the things it says to do, well, I don't need to memorize more verses. I don't need to spend more time reading. I need to spend more time doing what I'm learning from what I've already read. So this is true in any area, even the best of knowledge. But this would also be true in other information of other areas. What about choices? Technology offers more choices. Well, if I get this, then it allows me to decide more and I have more options. So it doesn't mean it's wrong to do that. It would just be, well, but would wisdom say that I need more choices? Or would I actually be wiser to say, I'm going to choose less choices. I'm going to choose to have less, because will more be helpful, or will more just be more complicated? And so the saying has come to be in our society, often less is more. Is less more always the case? Or is more having less always the best? Not always. There aren't absolutes. That's why we're talking about areas of wisdom. We've got to figure this out. We've got to get wisdom. And so since luxury is not fitting for a fool, when the decision is mine, would we all agree that we would not want to give luxury to a fool if it isn't fitting, if it isn't helpful, if it even potentially could harm them? Turn to Proverbs chapter 8 and verse 5. There are at least two kinds of fools in the book of Proverbs. When we hear the word fool, we usually think of the rebellious. And that is one kind of fool. But there's another one, another kind. Proverbs 8 and verse 5 says, O you simple ones, understand prudence, and you fools, be of an understanding heart. I have a footnote there for simple ones, naive. So there's a couple different reasons why I might be simple, why I might be naive. It might just be because I'm inexperienced. So that isn't necessarily someone who is chosen to be inexperienced. They just maybe haven't lived long enough to know enough. And so they're simple. And the book of Proverbs speaks of them from time to time. And then, of course, there are the rebellious. So parents, your children are fools, because you were a fool when you were young. They might be rebellious, but that's not mainly what I mean. Parents, your children are inexperienced. Your children are naive. And that isn't an insult. And if any of the younger ones are listening and understood what I said, that's not an insult. That's the way that God made you. God made young people to be limited in knowledge, limited in wisdom, limited in discernment. And God intended that would grow little by little. And we know that God could have done it differently, because when He created Adam and Eve, God immediately gave them a degree of knowledge and a degree of wisdom and discernment. He could have done that He could have done that in the process of human reproduction, that when a new human was born, He could have immediately instilled them automatically with a lot more knowledge or wisdom or discernment than He did. All of that was His choice. But He chose to bring babies into this world with pretty much no knowledge, no wisdom, and so they learn that a little at a time. So they come into this world, in one sense, fools. They come into this world simple and naive. So parents, don't focus on what your children want or what others have. That's a problem in our society. Focus on what they need. What do our children need? And that's a great challenge. What they need. How do I know what they need? Boy, we can't even just say, well, let me just look back and see what I needed when I was young. Well, I can assess it in some ways, but maybe some of the things I had when I was young aren't even accessible today. And maybe things are done so differently that maybe the nature of that in some ways has changed. So I can look to my own raising sometimes to assess what my children need. On the other hand, my children are different than I was at that age. So that's not the perfect measuring stick. So how do we determine what our children need? Think of it in this way. You can assess that in part by what they have shown. What are your children prepared for? In other words, don't give them more until you know that they are not naive in that area of life. Don't give them luxuries if they're naive until they have shown, for example, that they are willing and they understand the importance of honoring their parents. Ephesians chapter 6 is not only a verse of knowledge and of order, it's an offer that comes with reward, as Paul says. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment, with promise that it may be well with you and that you may live long on the earth. Boy, that applies in this subject of technology, that children who have luxury, children especially who have a lot of technology, and they don't obey and honor their parents, there are countless children whose lives have been destroyed because of that. So before you give your children the luxury and the privilege of maybe a device, it's not all about devices, but that's just a common topic, which automatically involves less oversight, before you give them permission to do things that involve less oversight, well then be sure you measure how well they handle your oversight. That's one measuring stick of what they need and what they're prepared for. What have they proven? What have they shown about in the area of gratitude? And gratitude is not just, well, do they say thank you? That's one outward expression of gratitude. Hopefully they pass that test. If not, then that's a red flag. But how do you assess their gratitude? By their prayers. There's a good way to get some insight into the hearts of our children when they pray. What about their sharing? And I don't just mean on a 3-year-old level of sharing, but at their own level, their willingness to share is one expression of their willingness to grasp and to exemplify gratitude. And then their willingness to help, and not just when they're asked. The willingness to help is an expression that I get, and I want to show gratitude. And so before children are ready for more, well, what have they shown in this area? This is a big one for our society today, because we see all the help wanted signs hanging up at businesses all across this country, before we would give our children luxury more than they need, what have they proven themselves? What have they shown about their willingness to work in order to earn what they have? In order to work for what they want? In order to work to earn what they need? Before I give them luxury, have they learned the lesson of the value and the importance of a willingness to work? What have they shown about the use of their time? And all of these things, of course, we don't expect them to be adults in their perception and in their practice of these things. But what have they shown? Have they shown enough concept of how to use their time and how to honor their parents in the use of their time? Give them some tests and make some assessment of that before you give them something that makes it even more difficult to redeem the time. Because I'll raise my hand on that. Technology makes it more difficult for me to assess my time and redeem my time, because there's a lot of different rabbit holes to go down. So if I struggle with that as a 45-year-old, somewhat mature man, what about our children? So before I'm going to open up that next door of freedom and temptations, not necessarily even of a sinful kind, but just a lot more choices and a lot more options, I need to make some assessment of how they handle their time. And then one other, what have they proven about selecting their friends? And this is one, again, those of you with older children or who have gone through that process understand better than I do, that's a delicate situation. You can't handpick your friends for your children and force them, these are going to be your friends. It doesn't work that way. And again, consistent with their age, then they start to get some freedom in that area. But then before you give them access to something that is going to deepen their relationships with the friends that they choose, and again, that's what social media does. It allows more contact. They know more information about their friends know more information about them, other methods of communication. Before you deepen those relationships, and before you give them permission to have something that deepens it, then you as a parent ought to assess, well, what do they understand about friends and influence and peer pressure? Because what if I give luxury to someone who is unprepared for it? It can feel good because I'm happy and you're happy, but we're not all helped. Is it wise? Is it loving? And young people, those of you who are old enough to understand what I'm saying, look back at these 5 points and ask yourself, what do you show your parents in the area of honoring them? And what do you show your parents in the area of gratitude? And what do you show your parents in the area of work when you have work to do? What are you showing your parents you've learned and you're willing to do without them being the one to direct you every minute of it? And how do you use your time? And who are your friends? What are you showing your parents? Going on from Ephesians chapter 6, though, having read verses 1 through 3, one more area that we need to think about is parents and or adults, not just parents. But as adults and as Christians, we have to examine ourselves. Within the parent relationship, there's this statement, fathers, do not provoke your children to wrath. And again, as parents, our use of technology is certainly one area in which if we're telling our children one thing, and then especially in the area of that which is clearly right and wrong, and then we're doing exactly the same thing, that's, as I understand this verse, that is one of the primary ways to provoke your children to wrath, is to practice the things that are sinful that you have warned them against. Who benefits from the way that you are using technology, the way that you are using luxury of any kind? I don't think any of us would doubt that in our nation there are children who are neglected. There are spouses, there are relationships that are neglected because of technology, and there would be other things. That's just the subject of tonight. There are souls in our nation that don't get the attention that they need for themselves. They don't choose to feed their soul because they're feeding their mind on other things. Among Christians, are my fellow Christians ever neglected because of the use of technology? And what about our God? Could it be that my relationship, my knowledge of God is suffering to some degree because of something as temporary as the benefits of technology? No one, as adults, really is going to tell us. We have the challenge of gauging ourselves, asking ourselves, what have I shown in all of these areas? And in Matthew chapter 5 and verse 29, you remember this: if your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out, cast it from you. We would say, unplug it. For it is more profitable for you that one of your members perish than for your whole body to be cast into hell. In other words, get rid of anything that is a barrier between you and your God, between you and heaven. And if that's something related to technology, then get rid of it, cut it off. So this is not just a warning about young people, because at any age we can be fools, as the book of Proverbs describes. At any age, maybe we haven't learned how to use the basics, or maybe we have refused to learn, or maybe because of our past life, we're a little behind the curve in the process of learning. And so how are we using speed and information and choices, and are we giving those things to others, or are we using them without being prepared to use it, without being prepared to benefit from it, and without being prepared to help others to benefit from it? That's the point, and that's the goal, is to use wisdom in all that we have, including the area of technology. Technology is just a tool. It's not good. It's not bad. I'm not warning against technology. It's like anything else. We have to learn to use it. And the way we learn to use it is with wisdom. And that wisdom is rooted, the book of Proverbs teaches us, in the fear of the Lord. If you see, again, there are the benefits, but if you also have learned of the dangers of technology for adults, but especially for children who sometimes bump into things that they were not specifically looking for. If you see the dangers of that, then include that in your prayers. Let's pray for each other as parents. Let's pray for each other as adults. Satan is looking for whom he may devour. And we all know he's been effective in the use of technology as well. And so let's pray for God's help in how we use what we have. And God will give, James chapter 1, wisdom to those who ask. Open your songbooks to number 378. Whether in the use of technology or any other tool that God makes available to us, if I've used my body, my tongue in any way to sin, then that separates me from God. How are we going to use what we already know? That's what the invitation song is. It invites you to use what you know. If you know that Jesus is the way and the truth and the life, then we sing this song to urge you of what you already know. If you know that he that believes and is baptized shall be saved, and you haven't been baptized, if you haven't confessed your faith, then we urge you to do that tonight. If as a Christian you need to cut something off, then do that and don't delay. You may not can do it in the invitation song, but leave here with that conviction of what you need. But if we can pray for you, this or in any area of life, that we would walk with him and abide in him. That's our goal. That's why we're here. If we can help you, come forward to tell us how as we stand and sing.